Welcome to the 37th session of Operating System on Linux. I'm Manibhushan D'Souza, and today we are going to look at the Linux operating system. So, in this session, we are going to look at the introduction to Linux, and we will see why Linux is so popular. Then we will see the file system structure of Linux, followed by how to log in and log out of the Linux operating system. So let's begin our journey with Linux. Linux is a open source version of a very famous operating system called as Unix. We call a operating system or a software in particular as open source when the source code of it is available for free. We are all familiar with the Windows operating system that we are always using, or the Microsoft Word or any other Office product. However, the source code, that is the programming language in which that particular operating system was written, is not made available to the public. So what we get is the binary version of the code. In other words, somebody has written the Microsoft Windows either using C, C++ or C Sharp or any programming language, we really don't know. It has been compiled and converted into the machine language. So what you get is the machine instructions. You don't get the source code, and we know very well understanding a machine instruction is very difficult and we cannot modify the code. Whereas when it comes to the Linux operating system, the source code is available. So if you want to know which programming language was used and how the code has been written for Linux, the source code itself is available, which you can use to compile it onto your machine. The other reason why Linux is so familiar is Linux is free. So people don't charge you for using the Linux. So you don't need to buy the licenses of Linux. It is freely available. So it is a free open source operating system. It was developed by Linus Torvald when he was a student in Helsinki in Finland. So this is the university where he was studying, and he developed the Linux. And you are all familiar. Linux uses the mascot as Tux, which is a very famous operating system. Now the Linux was derived out of the Minix operating system, which is a miniature of the Unix operating system. It was developed by Andrew S. Tannenbaum. So Tannenbaum was a professor and he was teaching operating system to the student. So in order to make the student understand the internal details of the operating system, what Tannenbaum has done is he developed a miniature version of the Unix operating system. And this code itself has been used in the Linux. It is not the same code. It has been upgraded to make the Linux operating system. So as I've already told you, Linux source code is freely available on the internet. You can download it. If you want, you can see how the code has been written, or you can modify it and upgrade it and make it still better than the existing one. Because Linux is derived from the Unix operating system, most of the applications which run on Unix operating system run seamlessly on Linux operating system. But the reverse need not be true. But in most of the cases, whichever that runs on Unix, either with the small modification or directly runs on the Linux operating system. Now let's look at why Linux is so familiar or so famous, why people love to use the Linux operating system. First of all, it is for free, and you know very well. So if you get something for free, everybody wants it. So if you want to purchase Microsoft Windows license, it is going to be a bit costlier one for everyone. Okay, so because the operating system is freely available, okay, and because it is derived from one of the most famous as well as the most secured and most efficient operating system, Unix, it is very famous. So everybody wants to use the Linux for the same matter. Okay. The other one is it is written in C programming language. Most of its code has been written in C programming language. So what's the advantage is C compilers are available in almost all of the platforms, whether it is the Intel platform, that is the CISC platform, or a RISC platform, or ARM platform. It's available in almost all platforms. So anytime you can compile the Linux code and run it on any of the operating system as well as any of the hardware architecture. That is why we say it is portable. Next one is the Linux support multitasking. What is the meaning of saying Linux support multitasking? Is at a given instant of time, Linux can run more than one task. So you can run parallelly more than one program in Linux. The next important thing about Linux is it is multi-user. Like the Unix operating system, more than one user can simultaneously use Linux operating system. And as I already told you, Linux was written using C program, and C is available in almost all platform. So Linux itself will be available in almost all platform. In other words, it is multi-platform. What is the meaning of saying multi-platform? Is it can run on different hardware architecture with the different types of CPU. So there are two types of CPUs, like RISC, reduced instructions code, as well as complex instructions codes. So it runs on both the architecture as well as it runs even on the ARM architecture. The Android that you are using, the base of Android is the Linux operating system. Now, the other reason why people use this particular operating system is there are many interestingly graphical user interfaces available with the Linux. So we have AX system, KDE. We also have GNOME IDEs, that is the desktops which are available. So if you look at the Linux as compared to the Windows and the Linux, Windows has only one graphical user interface, whereas if you in Linux you can switch from one graphical user interface to the other interface. Initially, though, it started with the X Windows system. Now, don't get confused with the Microsoft Windows. It is not Microsoft Windows. It is a windowing system that helps the operating system to draw a window with the buttons, icons, menus, and so on and so forth. So how you get this window on the screen with the toolbar, status bar, the mouse pointer, and so on and so forth. That requires a engine to run that on the system. So nothing is magical as such. So the Linux supports many the user interface. One of the simplest one is the X Windows. Also, Linux supports many peripheral devices. So there are a lot of APIs are available which are consistent, which helps most of the hardware to get connected with the operating system. So the Linux seemingly interacts with many of the peripherals. In other words, there is a consistent interface between the peripheral and the operating system. Next one is Linux supports almost all protocols. So may it is a TCP/IP or any other. TCP/IP is heavily being used. It also supports the other protocol. In when it comes to the application level protocols like HTTP, FTP, Telnet, network file system, and so on and so forth. Many protocols are being supported directly by the Linux. So using Linux, you can connect to the internet, you can connect to your telephone, you can connect to anything for that matter. You can communicate with the other system as well as the other user. The next thing about the good thing about the Linux, why it is so popular, is it provides a multi-level file system. So in the Linux, the files are arranged inside a directory, and the directories are placed in a hierarchical tree-like structure. You have studied about the data structure, and in the data structures you have studied about tree structure. So the Linux file system is a tree-like structure. Good thing about it is you can mount any other file system onto the existing file system. For example, there is UMS DOS, which helps the disk operating system, that is the FAT file system, to be get connected with the Linux file system. The other thing about the Linux is when we use the Linux operating system, you are using it now. Some of you may be wondering, I am not using Linux. I have never heard about it. Or you may say that no, it you may some of the other person might have told you that it is very difficult to use. Let me tell you, the Android that you are using is based on Linux, and you will not find it very difficult to use your Android phones. If you can use that thing, that is what is the Linux, and behind the scene it is the Linux. So even though the Linux performs a lot of complicated things, but all these machine related architectures are hidden from the user, so user can freely interact with the operating system and they don't need to learn many things. The other thing about the Linux is it provides a lot of utilities which are free. These are called as GNU softwares. GNU was started by a very famous person, Richard Stallman, and he is the one. The GNU was given a icon, the logo of this type. This is the GNU. GNU is actually, it's like a bull, that bison that you see here, but it is available in African. So it is available in African jungles. So you notice that it has some resemblance with it. Initially, it started with the GNU. The GNU stands for GNU is not Linux. Remember, the full form is GNU. G is GNU itself. N is not Unix. And later, Richard Stallman started a new association that is called as a Free Software Foundation. Okay. So most of the softwares inside Linux, Linux itself is free, and most of the software which are available in Linux is also free. Next, the reason why Linux is so popular is it supports many different types of languages. So you can type in Kannada inside Linux, in Malayalam, in Tamil, in any of Indian languages, Chinese languages, Japanese languages, Korean languages, and maybe Arabic languages. You can support it supports almost many different languages as well as different types of keyboards for that matter. It also allows the dynamic linking as well as static linking of libraries. What is the meaning of saying dynamic linking of library and static linking of libraries? Means in static linking, if you make the static linking, the library is completely connected with the source. So when the source code is loaded, library is also loaded along with the source code. Now because library is a huge thing, when the library is loaded, it consumes a lot of memory, and you may not be using all the functionalities of the libraries at all the times. So simply you are loading and wasting the memory or the resources of the computer. So for that, what is being done is dynamic linking has been provided. In dynamic linking, what happens is library is brought into memory only when the functionalities are required. Once the use of library is over, library is pulled out from the memory so that the memory can be efficiently used for the other programs which can be loaded and used. Also, it supports virtual memory as well as paging. We have studied about it in the previous videos. You can watch the virtual memory in the previous video if you really want to know about it. Let's look at the file system of Linux. So when we talk about the files in Linux, now you must understand one important thing in the Linux, and that is in Linux everything is a file. So when you want to get input from the keyboard, you may think that a keyboard is a hardware device, but Linux thinks that is a file. So it is a keyboard is a special type of file which can send one character at a time. So you may print the content into the printer, but for the Linux it is not the hardware, it is a file. So printer is a special type of file, so Linux writes into that file. In turn, that get transferred to the printer and it gets printed. So in Linux, everything, your mouse, keyboard, monitor, everything, terminal, whatever you call it as, everything is treated as a file. Now these files are not scattered, they are placed inside a directory, and we get a tree-like structure in Linux. Okay, the file structure of Linux resembles that of a Unix file system, with the root at the top of the hierarchy, followed by the other standard folders or directories below that particular root structure. So if you notice the Linux file system, the starting point of the file system is called as root. The root is not, ROT is not written. This is a symbol that is used. ROT is just to tell you that it is root. So this is a starting point. Inside this you have many folders, or it is called as directories like sbin, var, dev, user, etc, home, lib and temp, and so on and so forth. So all these folders can contain subfolder as well as files inside it. So let me quickly shift to the Linux environment here. I have Fedora with me. I'm going to just switch to the Fedora file system. I'm going to start the file manager. This is a very old version of Fedora. Don't worry about the version of the Fedora. Now if you look at this file system, so I have already told you the file system. Let me zoom it a bit for you. So file system starts with the root. Okay, so you may not get so you might have studied the Unix file system, and in the Unix file system you have seen not the Unix file system, the tree structure in the data structure classes, and the tree, you know very well, the root will come and so on and so forth. If you look at this one, if I rotate it, I can't do it because it is a desktop. If I rotate it, you see that this is the root. Remember, that's the root. Inside that root you have bin, then boot and div and so on. Inside that you have something. Now bin, there is nothing is there. Boot, there are some folders, and if you open it, you have some other folder. You open it, you have some other folder. So in other words, if you look at this structure, let me, where is that? Okay. If you look at this particular structure, let me zoom it for you. Okay, so if you look at this one, this is the root. Okay, this is the root. Inside that root you have one level. Inside that you have the second level. Inside that you have the third level. So let me draw it and just show you. So this is the root. Okay, then below this root, below this you have one level. So one of the level inside this is that bin. So you see that bin. So there is a bin here. Inside this you may have the next level. Inside this you may have one more level. So you may have one more level like this. So you may have one more level, and you may have one more level, and again you may have one more level. So you notice that and so on and so forth. So you notice that it is from here tree. This is the root of the tree. Then it is the first level, level 2, level 3, and so on. So for this is the root of the file system. This is the first level. Inside this is the second level. Inside this third, fourth, and so on and so forth. So it is a tree-like structure. Now if you look at this diagram itself, you notice that this is the root. Inside this root you have a bin. So if I double click on home, so I am inside the home. So where is this home? If you look at this one, so I will just show you. Okay, so slash home, slash is the starting point, and inside that you have home. Inside this you have money. So if I open this one, I get the desktop. So inside money you have desktop and so on and so forth. So you notice inside this you have a lot of things. I will do one thing. I will reduce these two so that you can also see the root also. So you can see this root, that's a root, and inside that you have home. So root is the starting point. Inside this you have home. So root is the starting point. Inside this you have this home. Inside this home you have money. So inside this home you have money. Inside money you may have my documents, downloads and so on. If you open this one, inside that document you have a new folder. So where is documents? Documents are inside money. And where is money? Money is inside home. And where is home? Oops. Where is this home? Home is at the root, that is inside the root. So this is how the file structures are arranged. Let me go to the, let me go here and let's go back to the PowerPoint now. Let's look at what are the significance of these folders. We will not say in depth into them. Let's look at briefly, let's look at them. So you have this bin folder. So bin folder contains essential executable files. So bin stands for binary. Binary means, you know, zeros and ones. Which codes are zeros and ones? Zeros and ones are those codes which are machine instructions. And you know very well, machine instruction can be directly executed by the computer or by the operating system. So binary files are there inside a bin. Bin stands for binary, short form of binary. So this is a bin. So bin contains all the executable file. Then you have SBin. So one important thing about a Linux operating system is, in a Linux operating system there is one person who controls the entire operating system, because Linux is an multi-user operating system. So there must be somebody to control all the other users, and this user is called as a super user. So super user is like a boss who will control all the activities which are going on in the Linux operating system. So all the, in order to control the activities, the super user requires some commands or some executable file, which some programs to control it. So these executable files are available under SBin. So what is bin? Bins are executable files which are available for everyone, whereas SBin are all the executable files which are exclusive for the super user. Then we have home directory. Now you know very well, whenever you log into Windows, you get this my document, my videos, my music and all. This is your set. So where you can store, in my document you store all your documents. In downloads you have all the downloaded items and so on and so forth. In the same way, Unix is a multi-user operating system. What is the meaning of saying multi-user operating system? More than one person can use the Unix operating system. So if you give only one desktop, one my documents, what will happen is, I download something, you download something, somebody else will download, every user is downloading into the same place, and everybody will get confused as to whether I downloaded it or somebody else downloaded it, whose file is this, and so on and so forth. So what is done is, for every user in the Unix operating system, a separate place is given, and that is called as a home place, wherein you can create your files, your folder, anything. So it is like your personal space wherein you can store your required content. So you have full permission to delete it, modify it, create it. You can do anything inside the home folder which is associated with you. Then we have etc. etc is the configuration files. So when you know very well, when you connect to a speaker, you increase the volume, you decrease the volume. What is this you are doing? You are configuring. Some of you will change the brightness to either you reduce the brightness or increase the brightness or increase the contrast. All of them, what you are doing is you are configuring. In the same way, when the application is created, some default values must be there, or some things has to be fine-tuned. And how do you fine tune? Is there is a configuration files which have some settings, so whose values, if you change in the configuration, the settings of the applications will change. Okay, so all these Configuration files associated with the different programs will be available under etc. Then we have var folder. Var contains all the log files. Remember, log files are the files which will tell what activities are being performed. It is like accounting. You keep track of the records of what activities are performed, who has logged in, who has logged out, at what time the person has logged in, what are the activities that the users has performed, and when that person has logged out. So in the same way, which application started, at what time it started, did it ended properly, did it didn't ended properly, and all these log information, that is called as log information, and that information is stored in the var folder. Then we have usr is a centralized location where all your application programs like X program or the documentation, the man pages, we'll see this man pages slightly later. The document pages, if at all you want a documentation in Windows, what you will do is you will press F1 function key, you will get the help. In the Unix system, they are called as man pages. Man stands for manual pages. So don't get confused. Why not a woman page means it is not man and woman. It is manual. Manual short form is man. So man pages. Then we have libraries. Libraries you know very well. If you didn't really get it, you have used one library called as stdio.h, math.h, conio.h, and so on and so forth. So all these are libraries. In the same way, there will be many libraries. All the libraries are stored at one place, which can be used by different applications. Then there is a TMP folder. The word itself says it's going to hold the temporary files which are created like scratch files. Then we have a dev folder which contains various devices. I have already told you in Linux everything is every device, whether it's a keyboard, monitor, any mouse, whatever you talk about, terminal, everything is a file for the Linux. And where do you find those files? Those files can be found inside the dev folder. Let me quickly show you these folders over here. So I will switch to the Fedora and I'm going to log into the Fedora. So if you notice here, zoom it for you. So if you notice over here, the bin, I don't have anything inside the bin folder. I have something in the bin folder. You're going to see these commands like cat command, cp command, and so on. So you will see these commands. Don't worry about it. And you will notice that the chmod and all these files, the commands that you see, these are the binary files. So if you right click and if you try to look at the properties of them, you will notice that these are executable. These are executable files which are there for performing some activities. In the same way, you will find sbin. So sbin is also a set of folders which are required by the administrator. Okay, so these are something like checking the disk and so on and so forth. So these are administrative work. So what is whether the system is properly proper or not, and so on and so forth. So all these trying to connect to the Ethernet and other all the information like F disk you have, you will see these kind of routines. So these are the programs or the files which are required by the administrator, and that will be available in the sbin. If you look at the etc will contain all the configuration files. So if I will try to open one configuration file, if at all I get one of them. So as sound.configuration one is there. I'm going to just open it for you. So you have some information, some configuration, place this in the global and so on. So you have some files with all the details. I can get if I get something interesting one, I can show you some of them. So init tab, okay, let's see. I try to open something. So you have some configuration information, and you notice if it is 0, it is halt. If it is 1, a single user, double, and so on. So if you want to change the setting, currently it is left to 5. That means X11 system is being used there. So this is called configuration. You are fine tuning the setting. If at all of them will be available here. You have home folder. So I am only one person who is using this system. So I have my home folder, that is the called as money under home, and I have my desktop, my document, my downloads, my picture. How what you have in the Windows, the same thing will be available here also. Then you have libraries, various libraries which are available for you. So like these also are the sound related libraries, and for all of them I will not go in depth into it. So these are all the libraries which are required by the system. Then you have what else you have this temporary, which contains temporary files which are being created. Then you have the user files, like if you look at this games, you see this I don't have any games, sorry about that. And you have this if any binary files are there, if at all it is there, you will see them. If it is there, I think it's going to take slightly longer time, and some files are there. So I have this Abbey word is there, and maybe I don't know what else I have. Something is there. Okay, so these are all binary files which are there. So then what else we had? Temporary files and user files. So these are the user related files, temporary, and var files are there. Okay, so this is the structure. So you can see that all of them are available even in the file structure. It is not that I am telling you something and it is not there in the real system. They are available in the real system. The next one is, how do I log into the Linux operating system? Now I have 2 times I have shown you how to log in. That is using GUI. So that is graphical user interface. How you log in into Windows, same thing, it is possible. However, if you don't have the graphical user interface, you can log in the command prompt. To log in, you just type login. Okay, when you type login, it's going to ask you for the username. You type the username, press enter, and it's going to ask you for the password, and you type enter, and it is going to accept it. I'm going to show this as a demo, but remember that I am already logged into the Linux system, so I may get a error. I have not tried to do login 2 times, but let me try it. So what I'm going to do here is I will zoom out for you so that you can see it properly. So I have this file, and not this file, and I'm going to close this. It's not required. I'll go here. Oops, where am I? Okay, let me go to the Fedora here, and let me zoom in just a minute. So I will go to this application, and then I will go to system, and I'm going to go to the terminal. So in the terminal, I'm going to just type login. So I type login here, press enter. It's going to ask you for the username. So login means I am to type the username. My username is money. It's going to ask me for the password. Remember, password will not be shown, so you have to simply go on typing the password. So I type the password, I press enter. It is going to say that there is a session problem and so on, because the reason is it just I've already logged into the system. I tried to log in again and again. Maybe I confused it. Okay, with the script, not that confused the OS as such. Maybe that script is already run. Okay, so this is how it's going to do. This has been told there. One important thing, Linux is like C programming language, is case sensitive. That means to say that if you type something in capital, something in lowercase, both matters more. Okay, so A in capital, A in small case are not same, because you know very well their ASCII values are different. So bit careful with it. Now if at all you want to log out, you can use Control D or exit or type logout. Remember, I can't type that command in the Fedora because that logout is not there. Okay, Let me show you that. So if I try to type this log out, I may get a okay. I get a message saying that command not found. It is not there. Okay. So what I can do is I can press Control D. Okay. I'll do it because it's going to close, or I can type exit. You can do this one. It's going to close. Now I have not logged out. Now you may say that where you're still there on the Linux, because I have just closed the terminal, not the Linux as such. Okay, so you can press Ctrl D also to do that. Now whenever you start something, some configuration has to be required. Now what you do in Windows, it may not be very obvious in Windows, but in Linux you have to do it, configure it. Now you know very well, when you try to log into the Windows, you get a nice desktop, your settings all will come. That is called as your profiles. Okay, at least you can have different profiles. So in Office one profile, and somewhere else on one profile. This profile information, that is called as environmental variables, will be stored in a specific place under etc. So I told you etc is always etc is used, where is my mouse pointer? Okay, etc is the one place which contains configuration information, and inside that there is a file called as a profile that contains the script that will be run. So when you log in, whatever that is written in that script will be executed. Now I'm going to just show you there. So if you go to the, let's zoom in for you. So if you go here to the file system excuse me, and the browser, okay, and I'm going to go here to the etc, and you can see there. Now you may not see the profile directly, you may not see the profile because it is hidden. Actually it is a hidden file, so you may have to go here and tell the Linux that show hidden files. Okay, then only it will be shown. So it is a hidden file. Okay, you can directly, you can see it somewhere. If you just type P, I think if I now do it, okay, PR will be there, PN, PR. Okay, so somewhere I am coming very close to that. Okay, PRO, I think is it there? Am I able to see that? I think I have to search on my own because it is okay. So I just got it here. So you notice that that's a file, a profile. If I right click and open it, now you will find some script that are running. So it is actually telling me which so you notice here etc profile system environment at the startup program for login. Okay, so this is a setup path which prompt has to be used, and so on and so forth. This is the script that it runs. Okay, there are a lot of things are there, don't worry about it. What is that it is doing? If you ask me, sir, it is not the time when we start learning about that, but it is a script that runs. Okay, now that's a common script that runs for everyone. The administrator can fine-tune it for a different set of users. So for example, for me, I can still fine-tune. So this script etc profile is common for everyone. Whenever everybody logs in, they are going to get it. But if I want my own personalized configuration, that will be available for under UTC, and so for example money and profile. I don't have that thing, I won't show it because it is not there. I have not created my own profile inside that OS. The other one is regarding the shell that we are going to use it. Okay, so specific shell parameter that if at all you want to use it, you can use that, and that is again available under the home. It is not under etc, remember, it is home, username, whatever username, and bash rc. Okay, let's look at that, and we'll just show you that. So let me go here and let me zoom in for you again. I will go to my home directory, so you know very well home will be here. Under home I have this money, and under money I will first view the hidden file. Okay, hidden file is there. Now I may not get the profile. That is what think I don't have the profile, but I definitely, everybody, you are going to see this. It's a hidden file. It is not directly available. I'll tell you when how to make the file hidden later, but as of now, just take for granted that it is a hidden file. I'm going to just open it for you and just to tell you that the some parameters which are there. Don't worry about it. Specifics about it, but it is the profile that is being used up. So let me go back. So let me go back and let's go to the PowerPoint presentation. So these things will be there. So that's all for today's class. We will meet again in the next class. Now suppose if you are really interested in knowing more about the Linux, as far as this session is concerned, you can always refer a book called Linux, A Practical Approach by B. Muhammad Ibrahim. Okay, it's available. You can refer them. Thank you for your interest.